Welcome to the doctor's appointment. It's your favorite doctor, the one who only prescribes the good stuff that makes you feel good. I'm in Serbia, in Belgrade at the moment, a beautiful historical city. Really a famous place for all the wars that happened basically in Europe. Tough history, but it's a beautiful place. I highly suggest you come here, see for yourself. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the disc golf form and about form check forums. And I see these types of comments everywhere. Like well-meaning people are trying to help other struggling beginner or intermediate disc golfers with the form. That was a fighter jet, really low. Makes you wonder how it feels to be in a war zone. These fighter jets, that's like third in 15 minutes so far, and it's really makes you feel anxious. So anyway, I was saying, as I read these comments from various form check forums, from well-meaning people who want to help other intermediate or beginner disc golfers to throw more efficiently, better, farther, more accurate, there's a recurring like 5 comments or 5 tips that I see most often. And while they might be true, and there is always a grain of truth in all of them, I need to elaborate on them, and I need to address the problems these comments have, and that you might not get much anything out of them unless you really know what's hidden between the lines. Because just saying that, hey, you need to reach back farther, doesn't mean really anything, or that you need to fire your hips. That doesn't mean anything unless you already know what the commenter wants to say. So without further ado, let's dive into these tips. Always remember to keep the elbow at 90 degrees. 90 degrees, baby, that's the sweet spot. You see, that really doesn't work. If somebody tells me to keep something somewhere, that means I have to tense. And I don't want to tense. I don't want to keep my elbow here, because when I throw and keep something here, it means that I'm tensing my whole upper body to keep a 90 degrees. And yeah, it may look like, and most often does look like, when a pro throws a backhand shot, that he keeps the elbow here. But that doesn't really mean that he's tensing it, or the elbow, to stay at 90 degrees. Because we don't want to tense. No professional player really tenses the body at this point. If you don't tense the arm at all, and it's relaxed at 90, and you start to throw, you will most likely round, because as you keep the elbow at 90 without tensing, and you turn your body, it doesn't really stay at 90 degrees. So we do have to move the arm in order to keep it at 90 degrees, which doesn't mean that we are keeping it anymore at 90 degrees, you know? So we do have to move the arm as we throw. And on top of that, the pros really don't have a rigid 90 degree rule. I mean, yes, at least 90 degrees. Because if you end up crashing the elbow to the chest, you end up rounding. So we do have to move the arm forward and the elbow forward in order to keep it at 90 degrees. But to tell somebody to keep it at 90 degrees is is bad advice. Just move the arm as fast as you can. Like, as fast as you can. That's the real advice. And if it happens to stay at 90 degrees as your body moves forward, then fine. But you really can move it faster so that it's more than 90 degrees. Look at, let's say, Simon Lizotte, Garrett Gerthy, like these big arms, Eagle McMahon. It's more than 90. So don't keep it at 90. Just move the elbow forward as fast as you can. And if it stays at 90, good. If it's more than 90, even better. If it's less than 90, well, move it faster. But I do have to elaborate on what I told you about the arm and the elbow especially, because it can make a difference how you move the elbow, because you really want to get the disc to the power pocket, which is somewhere very close to the chest. So for me, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever if I just move the elbow forward and kind of let the disc come in. That's cool. But some people tell me, and sometimes I feel like it's better to curl the disc in and then let it sling out. Either way, your elbow moves towards the target. So pick your favorite style of getting to the power pocket and work with that. But really, you have to move the elbow in order to keep it from collapsing to the chest. The choice is yours, which style you prefer. What is a peak? Now, a peak of your career, a peak of the stock market, a peak of a mountain is the point when there is no other way to go except down. The peak of your reach back happens when there's no other way to go except forward. So I see a lot of people do this. They reach like this and think this is the peak of the reach back. Well, first of all, it doesn't matter if your arm is straight or a little bent. Like, this has nothing to do with the length of the shot or the power you create. And this is not the peak of the reach back. You see, you can coil and coil and coil and coil and coil. You can be in this position and it still might not be the peak of the reach back, because the peak of the reach back happens only when the weight shift is done and you have coiled a bit more. So you can be in this position and this is the peak of the reach back. And I could still go a bit further back and a little bit more forward, and this would be the peak of the reach back. So whatever your position is at this point when you're taking the stride, it's not the peak of the reach back unless you uncoil before it's your time. So that is the peak of the reach back, when you cannot coil anymore. But even if you're in this position and you stride forward and you coil a bit more, that becomes the peak of the reach back. So it really doesn't matter if you are in fully reach back position if you still got a little bit more in your tank before the weight shift is done, and you have no other option than to throw forward. So don't worry about reaching back too early if you can still reach a bit more. You get it? There is no peak of the reach back until you really get to the peak. Got it? That being said, if you straighten your arm in the reach back position like this, you will risk injury, because you can do that when you throw if you add a follow through. But in your reach back, you're really nothing but jerking it straight. And as you know, your elbow doesn't like to be in a straightened position, especially if you want to do it as fast as you can. It's a very violent move. For example, Simon Lizotte used to do that. He doesn't do that anymore, and before he stopped doing that, he was injured for like 6 months with a heavy rehab and a lot of pain. So I highly suggest you don't do that because of the injury. But the second reason is that when you straighten the arm in the reach back position like this, your brain will get the impulse to also start throwing. At least that happens for me, and probably for you too. Because when you straighten in the reach back, you will throw. If you do that a fraction of a second too early, you have reached the peak of the reach back. And if you abstain from doing that, you only reach the peak of the reach back with the shoulders and the coiling and with the limitations of your mobility. And that has nothing to do with the elbow being straight. This is a very sticky myth. You don't really have to get the back foot like perpendicular to the target, and that can help you. I mean, you really do need to get down, and when you get down, your knee goes like this, and if your back foot is like this, well, of course you have opened up your hips. It's very hard to get your body to go forward, and it's hard to get the weight down because your knee joint is in the way. So yes, it might help you if your back leg is like this and you stride forward, but that's really hard to do. And that takes a lot of internal rotation from your hip joint. And many people, including me, don't have much internal hip rotation. It's more of an external hip rotation. You can go around this by keeping your weight on your toes. As you stride, and especially when you take the X step and your knee gets a little bit like that, externally rotated, if your weight is on the toes, this will happen. And remember, you don't do that. That will happen because you are going forward and down. So this is just a byproduct of that. If you see yourself backpedaling and you end up like this, well, now you're in trouble. So it can be true that keeping the back foot pointing that way when you throw helps you, but it's really a rare sight to see any professional player or amateur to keep the foot like that or to have the foot like that. It almost always points a little bit backwards, and that doesn't matter if you have a good mobility and your weight is on the toes. That lets your foot turn as you throw. But don't drag your heel. That's the main point. Don't drag your heel, get off the back foot and throw from your front leg. That's all there is. At this point, I'm pretty sure I'm either too old or too young or too out of touch with reality to understand that this has to be a meme and a joke. Because engaging the hips, and it's all in the hips, doesn't mean anything if you don't elaborate. And most of the people who say engage the hips have no idea what engaging the hips means. Because you can engage the hips like this, or this, or this, but it has nothing to do with throwing the disc. I mean, when people are told to use their hips more, this is what I see. Because this is a hip move, this is a very pronounced hip move. But it does nothing to your throw, but it's damn sure engaging the hips, right? So what do you mean by engaging the hips? In a way, yes, but I stopped using this cue when I realized people use rotation as a synonym to turning, and turning is really bad. When people turn, they usually just show the butt to the target, and then they swing their whole backside around the front leg, and they feel like it's a powerful move because you are using a lot of power and it's very ineffective, but it sure feels fast. Another way people misinterpret rotating is that they turn their head as fast as possible because you change the scenery very fast. You feel like this is turning, but your body is not turning any faster if you're turning your head like this. So rotating fast is a bad cue to me because you are not supposed to rotate fast when you throw. Let me show you. We need to create tension by coiling our shoulders. As we coil, our body goes to this very uncomfortable position where it really wants to come back to this position. But again, you can and actually should engage the hips also, because as we are here, you want to weight shift forward. You need to get all the weight off the back leg. What do? You do this. It happens from the hips, or some say you push off the back leg. But I don't use that cue because for me, pushing means this, and now you're just tipping over. So you want to keep the weight somewhere here and the feel somewhere here as you weight shift. Now that might happen from the hips, and does happen from the hips. Here, hips, push back. And that's the rotation. Very fast, very powerful. Forward and push back. That's how you engage the hips. But it's more complicated than just swinging the hips like this or rotating. Has two moves: weight shift, push back. And that's how you do the hip rotation. All right, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please show it with a thumbs up. Send me a emoji, maybe a smiley emoji or something positive. Share, subscribe, do whatever it takes to make this video a little bit more popular than it already is. Have fun practicing. See you later in some other place. This was Belgrade. Next time, somewhere else. I don't know where. Bye.